Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host, and as you note, I still have a team behind me. You got the guys on the top of the bars there. That's right. You got Jack. He's always out there knocking on doors still. He still hasn't forgotten about running for office. He ran for office. He's a city council person. I still say he's a city council person today because he's very, very active in the community. Welcome aboard, Jack. Okay. And then we've got Dwight Minnieweather. Minnieweather is he's a very community organizer, very, very much involved in the community in the Portland metropolitan area. And he's been on and he's a very active person. He also happens to be a minister. And he has his own church. And is very dear and very, very working with community. And we really appreciate Dwight being a part of what we're doing here at this point in time. Then we've got our guest, and Dmitriy is a very interesting guest because, in all due respect, when we look at all of the issues that are happening with us today, with the demonstration here in the Portland metropolitan area, and around the country for that matter. But in all due respect, we're still the greatest nation in the world here. And this is a voting time, especially. Sometimes people express themselves differently. However, they're getting a little bit more boisterous at this point in time. And hopefully we're going to get the type of leadership that we may have to look at part of the application form, if you will, when a person starts thinking about demonstrating in our beautiful city, beautiful roses. So we're going to be working. We're working on that situation. And but on the other hand, on your as far as Dmitry is concerned, we really welcome you to this country. We really, really welcome you to this country. And I had the opportunity, as I indicated before the show, that my wife reminded me that we'd invited two young ladies to work with us at Norma's Kitchen, and they were just great, fantastic. They raised some monies so that they could travel back home. And I thought that was kind of great. You know what I mean? And then I've also had another friend of mine. His name is Over. You'll probably meet him. He's going to come on the show at some point in time. His father wrote a book about that part of the country, why he came to America. A beautiful book. And so you'll meet him. But again, we want to express that. I want to express that on the front end. So now with that, we're just going to go on and introduce you and give you an opportunity to basically, again, share who you are, a little background on yourself, whatever you want to share for that matter. The idea that, you came to this country and give us a feel to other Americans that sometimes who are born here and tend to forget why you came. And then by listening to who you are and why you came and your motivation to organize and vote and respect this country, it's awesome. So again, that's why we want to give you the opportunity to share with some of the Americans, I call them the 10%ers who are not there, but they're still all there. But we're all Americans. We're still here. Okay. So with Dmitry, why don't we just go on and just have you just come on and just give us a little background on yourself and like I said, just go through the process. And I'm here basically hear who you are and whatever. Okay. All right.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me on, Jack. Thank you for organizing this. It's really good to be here. And Bruce, it's a pleasure meeting you. I've heard a lot of great things about you, and thank you for running for the mayor position. We needed some good representation on there amongst not the most best candidates. So thank you for running and representing the side that a lot of times is not represented. So thank you for that. And one thing I also wanted to say, thank you for to you and Jack, and I'm not sure if Steve, if all of you, thank you for your serving in the military, and thank you for your sacrifices and things like that. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Right.
Well, and like Bruce mentioned, my name is Dmitry, and I've lived here in the United States for over 20 years, 22 about to be exact. My family moved here from Belarus about 22 years ago, and some of you might recognize the name Belarus. There's some things that are happening the last few days that maybe we can talk about a little later as well, but they had just had an election, and there's a lot of riots because of the dictatorship that's going on there as well. But yeah, we came here for about 22 years ago. I was born originally in Russia, and my family moved. I was born in Russia during the Soviet Union in '89, and my family moved to Belarus when I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and we kind of moved back and forth with the family that we had in both areas. We had a very simple life. Our parents they probably lived in a more of a impoverished kind of towns, and they were definitely not a middle class. They were more of a lower class, but because of the Soviet Union falling and just everything that's going on, just nobody could really afford to have anything good. So we did the best we could, and worked really hard to bring up our families and things like that. But essentially, eventually, my parents were able to get a refugee status and moved to the United States, and we came here the day after Christmas in 1997. So that would be December 26th, 1997. I remember flying the airline very clearly, and it was a really interesting experience for the first time flying, but not recognizing it was just such a unique experience just the whole time. But I do have a lot of great memories still from Belarus and Russia, and some of the family that still lives there. We stay in contact, and hearing some of the things that are coming out of Belarus and sometimes out of Russia, it's troublesome. And probably sometimes when I try to fight and do some of the things I do here in the United States, a lot of times it's probably inspiring me, knowing some of the things that are going on there. You just want to sometimes fight to then hopefully bring better life to them eventually one day. So when we came here to the United States, I was 8 years old, very young. My parents both had a job. My mom eventually had to be a stay-at-home mom, and my dad had to just work really hard to keep up with the family. And we had four small kids, and eventually my youngest brother was born, and we had 5 total of us. And we grew up in a very simple life, and we really enjoyed it. We were thankful for all the great things that America gave us, and eventually, we bought our first house in 2000, and my parents were really proud of that, and they did the best they could to kind of raise the kids that they had, and they did a great job, and I'm really proud of them and the good work that they've done, the amount of effort they put in to raise us in a very simple but very good Christian family, where the morals and the ethics were very important to them, and that we were raised very, very well. So I do thank them for that. And as we grew up in this country, we've noticed we came to this America where it was considered a Christian country. It was considered a place where you have freedom to express yourself religiously and otherwise, and just we started noticing at least the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even further, longer than that, things just started to change. And some people started to get worried, and as a community, because the community is such a close community, they don't really get involved in the civil duties or civil activities. They're just kind of do their own thing, and a lot of times they don't trust the government because of some of the experiences that happened back in the days. And personally, like my grandfather and my grandmother on both sides, they grew up in the Soviet Union. They've experienced just some of the horrible things that happened during those times. My grandfather, who I was lucky to meet and have experience of hearing some of the stories a little bit, he talked about how he had he was imprisoned for being a Christian man. Originally he was one of the leaders in this community, one of the biggest leaders in his village, and he became a Christian, and because of him converting to be a Christian from an atheist, his whole town essentially converted to become a Christian as well, and that really put a lot of target on him, and where he was in prison, he was beaten, where he could barely come home, and his wife had to essentially care for him, and she had to take care of everything herself, the whole home, and that really made him very weak, and he was never the same afterwards. And I remember coming over to his house when he was maybe 70 years old. And normally, any 70 years old is still fairly strong. And he was bedridden for a long time. It really took a lot of his years away from him, where he could have done a lot more. But he was a great man, and he always preached love and God's mercy. And I still have some footage of him speaking those things, and he was just a great man. So I'm really proud of him. And but basically, knowing what my grandfather came through, and my grandfather came from, and what they had to go through, living in the communist government, and seeing some of the things that are happening now, it started to worry me and some of the folks that are my age, and we just didn't want to go there. We don't want to go there. And essentially, about 2 years ago, me and my wife, we moved to DC because my wife got an internship at the White House, and we had a privilege to live in DC for about half a year and spend time there, and essentially, spend a great amount of time in the White House, just having a good time and just seeing the beautiful historic things that are inside the White House. But just living in the White House and exploring it, traveling around the White House, and just being just in that DC area really inspired me. And to when I came back to Portland in 2018, it really inspired me to do something. And in fact, I'll rewind back just a second. Before I went to DC, I actually became a citizen for the first time. And that was a great experience. In fact, the day after I became a citizen, I ended up moving to DC. That was the day I drove out to go to DC. So that was a really cool. It was also a very unique experience, because normally, in order to get the ceremony and all that stuff, it takes a lot of time. And normally I would have been probably another week or another month until I could get my citizenship. But the way things just worked out, I was able to get my citizenship the day I had to leave, and it just worked out so perfectly that I believe that it was a miracle that I was able to get my citizenship and drive out the next day. Anything later would have probably put our plans to move to DC just completely off rails. But essentially, that kind of the whole trip to DC, the whole experience of me becoming a citizen and moving to DC triggered a course of events where brings us to here now. And first and foremost, everything that happened since then, which I'll get into here shortly, I would say it was a miracle on its own, and it's been a God's providence, and just Him putting together such a really interesting times where we're here now. But essentially, when I came back from DC, I believe that God put on my heart to start an organization with a few of my friends that would essentially go to the Slavic community and get them registered to vote, because we knew the community. We know that they're not active. They're not voters. They don't vote. They don't really get involved. And the beginning stages where we have to get them is at the registration table. We have to get them registered to vote. And we know that maybe 20%, up to 20% of them are registered and maybe voting, but it's a very small number. And we knew that that's where we need to start. And just the creation of the organization, the miraculous events that happened, kind of is a show on its own. But essentially, we started an organization that was designed to register the community to vote, educate them on the civic and government process, how the whole thing works, and then the next stage is to get the Slavic community involved and get them to run for local office. So those are the three pillars of the organization, and we've launched our organization last year in April, where we did our first registration drive in May, where we saw a great support from the community and some of the pastors, where before the pastors and the community was not even interested in getting involved. But I think just the community seeing things that are happening and seeing us doing something, it inspired them. Where now, maybe 2 years ago, the political talk was not even on the Slavic community's mind, but now, that's probably half the things that they talk about is what's going on and how can we change. It's a beautiful, very beautiful thing to watch. And just a year ago, things were completely different. And with things like COVID and some other things that accelerated this whole process even more, it's just very, very interesting to watch. But essentially, us being an organization, we have to abide by certain rules and laws, and where we cannot be a partisan organization. We decided, in order to make sure the whole community can be involved, we decided to stay nonpartisan, nonprofit, and go that route. And I think it was a good decision at the time, where this way we were able to attract, the secular community, where there's not many of them, but still maybe 10, 15% of them, maybe 20. And the rest is a Christian, Protestant primarily community, where, we essentially had to really just work with them, because it's really hard to find the secular community. And if they're not, they're still in church a lot of the times, because that's where the community is. So essentially, we noticed that going church to church every Sunday, finding a church that we haven't been to, and there's a lot of churches here. There's over 150,000 Slavic members here in Portland metro area, over 150,000. And combined with Washington and Oregon, there's some projections that are up to 500,000 of the Slavic community, and combined with Oregon and Washington. But essentially, our goal was to get the Slavic community registered to vote, get them educated in the process, and encourage them to run for local office. And we see that accelerate faster and faster. And where the community is just now, we're seeing individuals who are rising up and leading their own small groups and leading their own efforts all across Oregon and Washington. And I'm happy to announce that we're launching a chapter in Sacramento as well, where there's a great community there as well. Probably another at least up to 500,000 Slavic people just across the California. There's a big community there, and so we're hoping and praying that chapter does a good job, where they will go out to the community and do what we did, and maybe even more and bigger and greater. So that's going to be an interesting, just interesting to watch how that's going to work out. But essentially, where we're at now is we were doing registrations every single Sunday. Maybe missing one because of taking a break, because it was just a lot of exhausting work. And not only did we do registration drives, we were invited to network with different members of the community where we have never met before. But over a year, we got to meet a lot of great people like Jack and like some other folks that we were able to meet throughout this time, that just opened my eyes to how many great patriots there are in this state and both states. We're involved in both political processes in Washington and Oregon. We follow closely Oregon and Washington, and it's an interesting thing to watch and just know certain folks, and then eventually these networks kind of intertwine, and we were able to create some great events. Unfortunately, because of the COVID, we had to close down on some of those events and we couldn't continue. But we're looking to do some events in the future where it would be great to unite the two states and bring some great patriots across both states and do some great events together to unite, first of all, the Slavic community, because the Slavic community is also divided on its own when it comes to religious differences. And then at the same time, maybe we can inspire some other communities where they can maybe start something similar in the Christian community. I think one thing that's maybe lacking, and I keep hearing that a lot of American pastors are not really open to voter registration at their churches. And it's unfortunate. And I think what makes it easier a little bit on us is the Slavic community. I would say up to 90% of them, even if they're not Christian, they're still a very conservative community. They're still very close when it comes to that. And I think that's what makes it maybe a little bit easier for us to go out to church. There's not going to be a division amongst the church members and why we're here, because, they might support one view over the other. Sometimes you get some folks who are, still have those ideas that church should be separate from politics. But we're noticing that barrier shrinking more and more. And I'm happy to say, about 2-3 weeks ago, we were invited to a gathering of over 30 Slavic pastors across Washington and Oregon, and leaders of the Slavic community, over 30 of them that were great leaders of the community, very respected. And they give us an opportunity to present to them our mission and the work that we've been doing. And some pastors that were there, they were able to witness or testify that the work that we're doing have been a great, essentially benefit for their church. So just watching the whole thing just change from being super close and not involved in the politics, and in about under 2 years, where it's shifted so much further, where it's just beautiful to watch. A lot of great leaders are, like I said, are arising, and I just think this is only the beginning, and I don't think we can change the Portland that fast, where we can flip it to be more aligning with our views. But I think over time we could definitely do some good things, and I'm hoping maybe starting next year we can start some efforts maybe in the Hispanic community and some other communities where we can do something similar to what we've done here in Oregon, and Portland and Vancouver, with the organization that we do. But that's kind of a quick, maybe long kind of abbreviation of the work that we've been doing. I apologize for taking so much time. I wasn't expecting to go this.
We want to do it this way. Keep going.
Well, that's really about it. I don't have too much to say. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do have to run here in about 5-10 minutes to a meeting, but I'm happy to stick on and do a off video mode where I'll be driving to my next destination.
Sounds great. I understand you're in business too, right?
That's right. Shortly, me and my friend, we run a food cart. I've been in the culinary industry for over 15 years, and he's been in the business industry, and we've met each other about 2 years ago as well. It was a very unique kind of meetup, I guess, where he needed someone who can run the kitchen industry, and I was kind of in the transition of leaving the industry to do something different, perhaps in the political sphere, and I'm still kind of heading that direction. But we decided to partner up where I can help him grow the food cart industry the food cart business that he started, and there's some possible conversations about opening up a restaurant in the near future as well. But essentially, the restaurant or the food truck that we have, it's a Slavic cuisine. It's a lot Slavic food, and our goal originally was to bring the Slavic culture and Slavic food to the Portland, because similarly with politics, the food industry is not very broad with the Slavic restaurants around here as well. So you don't really see or hear a lot of Russian restaurants. So our goal is to also bring that influence as well, and bring some of that culture into the Portland as well from the food perspective. And
I've been there, and the food is excellent.
I appreciate that. And we're hoping to grow from there, and just because of the community itself, the culture is very warm and inviting. Even though you might, when you see a Slavic person, especially the older one, they have this very serious face, and it's because of the Soviet Union. They've grown in this environment where they don't trust anybody, because you really have to just rely on yourself and your family to make ends meet. And it's essentially you just have to kind of survive, and you don't really trust anybody. That's the kind of environment that unfortunately is created by the Soviet Union or the socialist or communist environment. So and that's why they're so serious all the time. That's why they're still trying to break through that barrier of being used to living in a communism kind of mindset, and Christianity, or being close to kind of finding true meaning of Christianity or Jesus or his message. A lot of times we see a kind of breakthrough, and folks really breaking through that mindset and starting to get out of that mindset, and it's just a beautiful thing to watch. But yeah, we have a food cart here. There's a few other things that we're working on to expand and go further with other things, and it's definitely been hard right now during the COVID to try to stay open, keep the doors open. But we've been blessed by some businesses that gave us some catering orders, where it really helped us to keep us afloat and keep our doors open. So it's been great. God's been with us the whole time and been blessing us this whole time, and glory goes all to Him, because I can clearly say, without His provision and His blessing during this hard time, we wouldn't have been able to survive in a lot of ways. And but yeah, that's kind of the short or long story of ours.
Good. Well, look at it. I really appreciate your the idea that your presentation and your assimilation, you're doing well. Your language, your language, well, you've been catching up real well. And you were young, so consequently you were able to do that. Mom and dad might have had a little bit more problem, but and still maybe doing still the old school, right? Got me?
Right.
But on the other hand, it's great that you what you guys have done, and then now you come in a very interesting time. And as I was listening to what you were saying, and this, that, and the other, you came here, and because of this, what this country, the value, and this, that, and the other brings to the table, if you will. And as you can, this is a very unique time. As you know, we got the Black Lives Matter and the pandemic aspect of it. Black Lives Matter, and from a historical standpoint, it goes back to the Civil War. See, when we went through the basically got away from Britain, if you will, the mother country, and then all of a sudden we got we were all together. We were just sort of a melting pot, and to this date, we have been struggling. People of color, Black folks, we've been struggling, trying to get basically assimilate. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. It's really interesting because the community is very confused right now because they came from the Soviet Union or they came from the Russia where they never were involved in the slavery.
Right.
And now we're being told that we have to do all these things where we ourselves were oppressed and we ourselves were experienced a lot of damages where so it's really confusing for the community, and it's just very hard time and really hard to understand and explain to the community. But it's unfortunate, and we're hopefully we can move on and someday hopefully soon, and looking forward to the election day. I think it's going to be an interesting time. I personally love history, and I love I know just the whole experience of this really unique time is really interesting to me because it's just I enjoy it probably more than I should, but some folks are probably troubled by a lot of times, but I have a lot of peace in my heart. At the end of the day we win. But it's just interesting to watch and just experience this very unique time.
This is going to be great because Jack brought you to the table, and you know what I mean. And he knows me, and we're kind of a military group. Like Dwight's over here, he was in the Army routine and whatever. So you're going to be able to basically transition, if you will, in this whole issue with Black Lives Matter. Because we're all a unit across the board, and so you're here, and so consequently. We'll make sure that you understand what that diversity is all about, and we definitely understand about parents because we had old parents too, and they're still here. And the fact of the matter is they're struggling in their rights. But, we're because of that military deal. The military was a melting pot. I mean, big time. I mean, there was no such thing as color. It was basically the bars on your lapel and then the stripes on your sleeve. That's what it was all about. Okay.
Yep.
So I'm just saying that we want to welcome you here, and that's why I said we want to make sure we invite you a little bit more often. And by the way, I've joined your group. I Googled YouTube and checked you out as far as the Slavic vote piece aspect of it. So I'm one. Like I say, if I have any problem with translation, I'm going to call you and Jack. but I want to definitely be a part of that process. And Jack is a good teacher with reference to being able to share with you about politics. He knows me and vice versa. He knows Dwight. And that's why I'm saying periodically, we'll just invite you. And then that's a good way of developing relationships with all folks. And when your folks see people of color and this, that, and the other across the board, they can understand better, just a little bit better. You can't push the old folks too much. You got to give them the opportunity to understand what is going on, but they're still definitely in the best country in the world. And we want to welcome you, and we appreciate your presentation. And like I said, we'll get back to you. Jack will get back to you, and we'll tell you about some of the future shows we're having. And basically, hey, we're going to move on, and we're going to help you out, and vice versa. We welcome you to this country. And again, God bless. Okay.
Thank you very much. And my understanding, you guys are working with Open Signal to.
Yes.
I actually have a little bit of experience with Open Signal. So if you guys need any assistance there, I believe I'm on the studio staff or at least certified in studio and certified in some of the other departments. So I'll be happy to help in any way I can if that's necessary.
And right up front with you, the contact person is Steve. There he is right there, Steve Roberts. In fact, if you got his number, call him or whatever, and make sure you share your number with Steve and right up front with you. He's doing the Zoom thing, and we want to expand this. And in fact, he's putting the system together such that he can help you out and put some, put a system together, and he can help you put that piece together, because this is very, very important to communicate. Communication is key to anything and everything we're all about. I
Amen.
So that's why we use this here. And as you can see, what you're doing today, we're basically recording it right now. But what he does after we record it, he basically put the opening and closing of the show on at the studio. He sends the technology to the studio, and they put it on, and then it comes out on Sundays at 4:00 on the Comcast. 4:00.
All right.
Okay, sounds good. And welcome. Take care. God bless you and the family.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks everybody. God bless.
Thank you.
We'll be right back, folks. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the second half of the Oregon Voters Digest. Appreciate it. And for those of you who didn't get the first part, you really need to get that first part. I mean, we had a gentleman that spoke to us from Russia, is from Slavic. I mean, there's all sorts of situations. But Russia, you recognize that particular name. But the fact of the matter is, he came to the U.S. and he shared with us his reasoning for coming to these United States and the challenges he had and bringing the parents over. But guess what? He benefited real well. Man owns a home and he's got a business and he's been very, very productive. He still doesn't know all our ways down here yet, but he'll get his fair share. Let's put it that way. But no, he was very, very interesting. So if you have an opportunity, go back and look at the first part of the show. You'll find it very, very interesting in terms of how people transition to this country. And he's not familiar with the whole issue of the black and white thing. It's quite obvious, but I'll be right up front with it. The fact of that is that we still have our issue here in our country, black and white. And actually he has white skin, so the majority is white skin. So consequently, his assimilation is a little easier than there. But we're going to break that whole situation now, because the Black Lives Matter. That's what that's all about. We are all Americans. As soon as we can get over this so-called color line thing, we'll be all right. Because when it really gets down to that color, it's all about the green. If you got that green dollar, you okay. That's what it's all about. But anyway, I thought it was a very interesting interview. And so what we're going to do now is that I've got a couple of the guys that are still here on the show. You see them on the screen there. You got Jack Kerfoot and you got Dwight Minnieweather. And the whole idea is that we're going to kind of get a little update on what's been happening in the city since the last time we've been with you. Okay. So with that, I'm going to say, hey, Jack, how you doing? You there? You got Dwight? You there?
Yes, sir.
I tell you what, we started off with any comments on Dmitriy when we had him on. Jack, you want to start, and then Dwight can just come right on in.
Well, actually, I met Dmitry when I was campaigning for city commissioner, and I was very impressed with the fact that they were focusing on trying to bring the Slavic Russian community together to educate them on the importance of voting. All of them have taken, obviously, citizenship tests, and they're well-versed in American history, probably more versed in American history than many Americans. But their culture in Russia is not to vote, because their vote doesn't matter. No matter what name they write down, the winner of the election is predetermined. So he's working diligently to try and educate the Slavic community on the importance of registering to vote and the process to understand the information that's available. And I think that's a wonderful position that he's taken. He's also a small businessman who's trying to struggle through the difficulties of COVID and, of course, the unrest that we have in our city that's hurting our economy. So I was appreciated the fact he made time, and I think it was a great interview to give him a public opportunity to view a different slice of Portland, which is made up of many races and many people of ethnic backgrounds.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. I pretty much enjoyed him too. very impressed with the fact that a lot of the things that I'm doing right now kind of co-lined up when I'm out right now in a homeless community with a bunch of people that are, feeling the same way as that Yugoslavian community, that their vote doesn't matter. They're just on the side of the road. And I'm cultivating from those people, ones with ID, and we got an event next Saturday trying to get them to vote, trying to just open up the views of that. So I was really impressed with the fact that, and I didn't know that about the voting with the Yugoslavian community. That was some great information for me, because I would have never even thought that whole community had, not been voting or being a part of the voting structure. I didn't know that information.
Russians don't like democracy, and neither do the People's Republic of China, because it will spoil their plans for having a dictatorship. So yeah, it's a different culture, and it's a very oppressive culture as well. So you will find that they are very patriotic, and they think America is a wonderful country, because they've come from places where the benefits that we have here can't even be imagined in the Slavic community in Russia and the Ukraine.
Well, the point you're making is right. And when I noticed when he shared the numbers of Russians that are here within this location, that was pretty heavy. You got me?
Yeah.
And in all due respect, when you think about the black community, we definitely don't have that kind of a number in the state of Oregon or Washington aspect of it. And too often what happens is that a lot of times the people who meet them at the door, in all due respect, they don't have black skin. They've got white skin. So consequently, they get caught up into that black hole, so to speak, in a negative kind of a way. And so all of a sudden, here we are, and then they're looking at the TV, you know what I mean, the views and this, that, and the other, and the communication or whatever. And then they sort of take sides. So that's basically what our country has been going through. And it's kind of like enough is enough. That's why we have Black Lives Matter. I mean, I realize there's many definitions running out there. You talk to different people, and there's their own thing and whatever. But realistically, this is good for this country that we're speaking about this issue. This issue has to be resolved. It has to be. And I was here at 82 years old now, and I was fortunate to be here to have been able to elect a president who happened to be of the same color and culture like me. And that was beautiful. And now this next step I'd like to see is the fact that we are diversified across the board. There's no such thing as black and round and green and orange. It's about America. And we have our respective cultures. And we celebrate that during those particular times. We'll have a various day or whatever to basically share with the rest of the population about what that culture is. I'm from Louisiana and I'm black. Well, guess what? You get a piece of that action. I'm down in the South, in Mississippi, and I'm eating neck bones and whatever. But guess what? You get that culture. Or you get Slavic food, or you get Chinese food, or whatever. So I think this is a beautiful time. I just want to be at the end of the day that we are together. And I like the idea of the crowds that are out there across the board. I mean, everybody's got guns now. The NRA made sure everybody got guns. That's right. We got all kinds of guns, if you will. And so I don't see anybody all of a sudden just picking up those guns and just all of a sudden just shoot, having a civil war of some sort. We went through that during the Lincoln era aspect of it. We don't have a civil war, and we're going to work this thing out. A lot of folks are out there. However, we got to remember getting right down to the meat of the matter about the protesting here in Portland, whatever. We got a certain element. We got the COVID, and the COVID is trying to sort of quarantine us in your own home. But we got a lot of young folks. Hey, that doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? I'm worried about this. I was worried about that when we first came out with it. They're going to come out with the COVID and tell you, well, go get tested. And then when you get through getting the test, you say, well, where's the cure? They say, we don't have no cure yet, but you could go get tested. Well, that didn't work. And I'm having some problems even digesting that today. And so my point is that, but we're going to get over it, but it's really messed up with the economy. And Jack is really on point on that piece. And too often we don't talk about the economy and the definition of the economy and how it talks to workers and owners, if you will, the businesses. You know, you got to have that. You got to have somebody that will say, "I'll hire you for something." If you don't, we got a problem. So I think things are going off pretty good. Going on pretty good, and that's why we're going to stay on point here at the Oregon Voters Digest, guys like you and the rest of us, and we're going to invite people like the Dmitrys of the world and get them at the table so that they won't forget what's going on and participating. And so I think that's a good piece aspect of it. That's kind of like my little upfront part piece of it. But let's get down to the protesting piece and maybe get some comments from each one of you. And Dwight, why don't we start out with you? What are you hearing since the last time we got together?
Well, most of the situations that I've been running and reoccurring upon is the march out there on the precinct out on Lombard out there where they're doing more of the activity now, where they're more active now. I've seen some videos and I've been a part of some videos that are downtown. And it's looking like that's kind of whittling away a little bit. It's slowing down and they're moving in another direction, it seems like, with this movement. But again, it's just great to just see people out there pressing and constantly pressing for the benefit of African Americans being able to find the narrative again of just equality when it comes to being policed, when it comes to being involved with the police, that we have a fair opportunity to just make it home. So I'm just still thankful to see that they're still moving around and it's a little activity, all the other extra. Everybody knows about the extra that's going on, and
Right.
and just thankful that we're making it through, and it seems like it's tapering down. Hopefully they'll figure out where we meet at the table so we can figure out how to get some things moving so we don't sit around too long and they pick the narrative back up again.
It's good. Jack, what do you think?
One of the points I haven't heard discussed yet on Black Lives Matter, to a great extent, on a national level, yes, but not on a city level, is how do we bring education of the different races and the impact of the different races in our history into our textbooks and our education. I saw a video clip of Muhammad Ali when he was heavyweight champion, and he was in London doing an interview with the BBC. And to me, Muhammad Ali was not just one of the greatest fighters of all time. He was a brilliant man, a very articulate man. And he went on to a bit of a soliloquy in the interview saying, you have to understand the issue that Black people have in America. He goes, I remember asking my mother, Mama, how come all the angels are white? How come Jesus is white? And he went on and on and on. And it was an excellent point, the fact that we really haven't brought the true history of America into our textbooks. For no better word, we've whitewashed our history. Now, I grew up in Oklahoma, which used to be called Indian Territory. It's where they forcibly marched the Native Americans into reservations on the state and before it became a state. And then they turned it into a state and shrunk the reservations even further. And to their credit, in the 60s, they were teaching about the Trail of Tears and the forced migration of the Native Americans into the state. Sadly, today, that's not a key point in the history. And that's certainly the case in the issues in the Civil War in many states. How the Civil War is represented and the history of Blacks in America and how they were forcibly brought here is not accurately represented, or the major achievements of the Black community in the history of our country from the very beginning, before those that were not slaves who fought in the war, the Revolutionary War, all the way through the Civil War, through the Second World War, the First World War, the Second World War, through Vietnam, and through today. And the impact that they've made in our governments, not just to the recent president, but in our government, in medicine and in science, that's not really equally represented in our history. And that's something I'd like to see change.
I appreciate that. That's a very, very, very good point. And and in all due respect, thinking about Portland, Oregon, about our education system and things of that nature, I've always had an issue, or a little concern, if you will, in terms of the number of Blacks that are here in the city of Portland. Not that many aspect of it. Then I ask myself, well, what about the transition? How, as far as I'm concerned, the assimilation has a problem. And when I think about the education, and a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but I've talked about it on my talk shows. And that's the school that we have called a charter school, so to speak, called SEI. SEI, and it's just an all black kid, just black kids. And as far as I'm concerned, is that what's going to happen when a black kid gets to the point he has to look at a white kid? See, and so it should be the Portland public schools should be totally integrated, big time. And I've even made it a point that the person who put that together, Tony Hobson and Ray Leary, an aspect of it, I think at that point in time, I always suggested that Tony's done an excellent job at educating those kids. But at the same time, he could have been superintendent. I've even lobbied the fact that he should be a superintendent. You know, the guy's very popular. He's very knowledgeable, and he was able to get he's got the teachers there. They're all people of color. You see, these kids are in uniforms. They're in college. They graduate. The whole 9 yards. By the way, we have the largest failure of graduation in Portland public schools right here. Here we got a person right here in the city who knows the community. They will not lobby or reach out to him to be the superintendent of Portland public schools. I mean, I'm just throwing it right out. And see, so we're playing that divide routine. That doesn't help the situation out at all. You got me? And so I just want to make sure I get that on the table because, you know, right now there's still that divide. You know, there's pushing school over here or whatever. I mean, when you think about it, they're the only one that's able to, kids will put uniforms on in this environment. You can't do that in Portland public schools. And he's able to do that in the schools. All the kids are graduating. But guess what? They're graduating out of SEI, but they're not graduating out of Portland public schools.
That's right.
And it's all about leadership. He just happened to be the kind of leadership and his CEO and this, that, and the other. Very impressed. In fact, they're running ads now, fundraising. He's fundraising for the school. Sure, he gets a certain amount of money he takes the kids' money from the state. The fact of the matter is, I mean, all of the other benefits, this, that, and the other, he basically raised the money. Not just in the black community, because you don't have that kind of, but they do support. See, but I want to make sure we get that particular. I want to get that point out. And I really appreciate what you're saying, even with Native Americans in many cases, if you will. There's not enough in the books aspect of it.
Yeah.
You got me? And so you got that piece aspect of it. Then we got the Hispanic aspect of it, and that's another issue. You got English as a second language. As I'm concerned, it's not English as a second language. It's English as a first language. That's the way it should be, because we got so much diversity here. Otherwise, you'd have to, one person would say, well, gee whiz, I want my language to be right up front. Well, no. It's English as a first language. We are a melting pot, and we've got many cultures that are in this particular country. And we need, and the only way we can get to that point we understand, we got to be able to talk about it like we're doing now. We got to talk about it to educate one another. It's not just a one size fits all. No, that's not the case. Right? And that's why I'm saying that it was so neat to have Dmitriy coming on, and he shared it to a certain degree when he made mention about the Hispanics. You see, but he didn't say black. And so, but my point, but it's okay. And it's okay to share that with the public across the board, because that's how we got to the point where we are now. People are going to be going back to 1863.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so the name of the game is that's why we need to talk. That's how we need to reference, just like Jack, you just shared your thoughts about Native Americans. They don't want to talk about that piece. And and I know a number of people who are very successful as Native Americans, Indians, but guess what? And they're CEOs, but they can't share the fact that they are. That's their background. Now we just got to share that, and I think it's good to do that. And so we're going to be point on that piece, and and folks should be proud to identify their cultures. There's nothing wrong with that. That we do that at least once a year. Everybody comes to culture, eat a little food here, eat a little food there, and it's great. That's what it's all about. Okay, good. But I want to throw that out there. Now, on the other hand, another piece I would share is that the same thing with reference to the rioting. On the rioting piece, like you said on Lombard, Dwight, now imagine if we didn't have Black Lives Matter, if Black Lives Matter was just out there by itself, and trying to demonstrate just black folks, guess what? there wouldn't be no folks sitting up on those streets. They could ride on MLK, but nowhere else in the city. That's a fact. We're still living with that to a certain degree.
Yes, sir.
And we need to talk about that. But because of the movement and because of George Lowe, because of George and the kneeling situation, guess what? People don't want, now we're talking. We got the opportunity to talk about it. And even though we got a lot of other factions that have their elements and issues and whatever, boom, they've got a right. That country was built that way. But my point is that the Black Lives Matter piece is kind of like the focal point. If we can solve that issue and diversify that issue and assimilate that issue during this particular movement, boy, we have achieved. And I want to be here when it happens. I want to be here when it happens, okay? So I just want to throw those little points out, and by the way, just take it from there, guys. Just jump right on in there and put the piece on. Let's talk about we talked about the fact that now we got a new city council person. We got a new city council person with Dan Ryan. And it's my understanding that one of the votes is going to be naturally Joanne Hardesty, City Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. And she worked hard to get him in there. She endorsed him also. Now, and you know, the magic number is 3. You got 5. Number 3. Well, hopefully, I'm interested in quote, they will basically districtize this city for once, so people in the various areas would know who to call. Right now, they don't know who to call. And we got a young man that's sitting up there. He's still OJ10. I'll be straight up with you. You know, he happens to be the mayor, but he is the mayor. He's sitting in that seat. And he's trying, but you know, this is not the kind of a city where you basically just trying something. You got to be somewhat qualified. You've got to have some experience. Not easy. It's a not easy deal. So hopefully we got some senior folks. We got the Joanne Hardesty. I mean, her lane was police. That's what she did. That was her platform. And Dan Ryan, he had again his lane. We've got homelessness, and that's a big problem here. Hopefully, he's going to be bringing some solutions to that problem. It's really a sad situation to see human beings out there just living on the streets.
Bruce, I would make one point. He's the only one that came out, that's on the city council right now, has actually applauded the efforts at Bybee Lakes, which has just started up in a homeless group, and it's run now by a group that's been operating on the west coast of Portland and had very good success with their approaches, very similar to Haven for Hope out of San Antonio, which is rated as one of the best, if not the best in America. So I'm encouraged by that, and I think he's very analytical, and I'm encouraged that, or hopeful, and that he will do a very good job on the city council. The next question, of course, is who will win the runoff between Mingus Matz and Chloe Daly?
Okay, let me throw something out to you, Jack. Just a little. It's just kind of. I was so involved in the whole issue of Wapato. Okay, Bybee Lake situation. I mean, it's really a sad situation. The first point I'd make is that you got $100 million piece of property, and you're going to sell it. But that's normally how real estate was treated when they basically foreclosed on a piece of property. Property was sold on the steps of Multnomah County, and it was designed such that if you were wealthy, you could get the property. You were not, looking for some place to say, you couldn't even have access to that. And that's the first thing I would say. That was disappointing. The other thing is that because of the politics of the matter, we did not get the best person for that facility. We got and I applaud the person for what he did on the coast. Okay, we've got the city of Portland aspect of it, and a black woman who happened to have been the president of Volunteers of America, who's had experience and exposure here in this city, right here, in a very diverse way aspect of it, initially had proposed to basically take that whole facility. And at the end of the day, politics came in, threw her under the bus. And so so I'm disappointed that happened. Now, like I said, there were 500 beds. In fact, even because I was running, I was trying to get the VA involved in the process. The VA he was saying that the person that's in there now could not fill all those beds accordingly. And he still has to deal with the politics of the people here in Portland. So the name of the game is so all of a sudden there he sits, but with her, she could have occupied that organization, that building, and basically maintain 500 beds, mental illness across the board. And then, like I said, and if the VA could have worked the deal out with the VA, and then the VA could have been a part of the deal. Or better yet, it should have been the county should not have sold the building. Because right now, as we pick up folks on the streets in this demonstration aspect of it, the sheriff has to have the beds. So you ask the question, it's very simple. You ask the question, well, where did they take those people? Well, guess what? You know where they took the people? They took them to other counties. And guess what it cost? It cost quite a bit of money. My point is that those beds were valuable beds.
Bruce, here's another point as well. So we've got Wapato, which has been turned now into a homeless shelter, but then, which was a Multnomah County property. But we recently had a Multnomah County proposal that was passed for additional taxes to raise $250 million a year for the homeless. And when I asked Sam Chase specifically the details of this proposal, because it's a 100-word description, basically it says we're going to provide medical and food and mental health care for the homeless, but there's no plan. And he said, well, trust me, the county will do well. It's only $250 million a year. Well, I'm sorry, but based on what happened at Wapato and based on what I've seen so far by the county, I have seen no reason to trust that the county will effectively develop a plan to spend that money wisely and effectively. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm really disappointed in the way the county is approaching the fiscal responsibility and how to really make true efforts to help the homeless.
Well, I agree with you. In fact, that's why I ran. And, in all due respect, I ran. And the bottom line, what I found out was, in all due respect, the leadership, in most cases, straight up unqualified. I look at their resume, they have no background. You should have some sort of a background in terms of what you're going to do.
Right.
That's the problem we're having right now today. They're there for short terms, and it's just politics. And that's not what we need. We need leadership. We need leadership. I mean, that's exactly going right to the city. About this situation. We got an upcoming election. Make sure you look at who you're going to give support to. Very important. And we got a presidential election, which we're going to talk to too. Well, hey, pay attention. Oregon Voters Digest is going to be right there for you. Yeah, Dwight, here we are, and the rest of the guys. So have a good one. We really appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.